Boker Tov, good morning, Raya and Mordechai. Thank you very much for hosting and broadcasting our shir, and welcome to everybody to our morning shir right here in Yerushalayim. Let me show you right over here, right outside the Chabad of Rechavia. You see the beautiful Yerushalayim, and we're able to begin the shir. If you want to see that projector that you just saw behind me, you have to come by in the evening. You'll see a very nice surprise that we just began yesterday. Okay. Over the past couple of days, we've been learning the second Mishna of the fourth chapter of Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, and we're going to continue now. Let's start with the first statement of Ben Azza. He says, "Havei Ratz ledvar," for you should run to do even a light mitzvah, quote unquote. And so it's very important to remember. And so in Chassidut, there's a concept of Ratso. Comes from the same word as Ratz. That's what we do in the Mishna, to run. You should run to do a mitzvah. Ratso means to cleave. It's similar to the word of Ratzon, a will, a desire. Where do we see this concept? We had it a couple of weeks ago in the Parsha with the two eldest sons of Aaron HaKohen, that they had a great yearning, a great desire to be connected to Hashem and to go into the Holy of Holies. Although they were not allowed to go into the Holy of Holies, nonetheless, they went in and they passed away as a result of that. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that when it comes to a ratzo, a desire to connect to Hashem, that's how we have to approach a mitzvah. Havei Ratz, Ben Azza says. Havei Ratz, you should run, you should have a great desire to do a mitzvah, even if it's a quote-unquote light mitzvah. But the fact itself that it's a mitzvah, that's something which is special. But at the same time, not to take away from this excitement, Chassidut teaches us that we have to have a shov, a return. It's important to have the energy, the drive to do a mitzvah, but not to expire, like Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron, that their neshamas expired because they were so excited to do this mitzvah and connect to Hashem. And so, actually, it's interesting that Ben Azza is the one who says this statement, because Ben Azza, according to some opinions, he never married. And he says, Nafshi chashka b'Torah, really desires learning Torah. He had a great thirst. So for him, it was almost as if there was only the Ratso. That's what he says, Havei Ratz. But in a sense, it was missing the shov, the returning, the landing. What is the landing? The landing is that we can't just expire from our bodies. We have to do the mitzvahs. And the mitzvahs usually keep us down to earth. So on one hand, he himself is saying, Havei Ratz ledvar mitzvah, run to do a mitzvah. But as we said in one of the earlier classes, that we're not only talking about the mitzvah itself, we're talking in the preparation, running towards a mitzvah. And in that sense, running towards a mitzvah is in addition to the mitzvah itself. So of course, Ben Azza is not suggesting only the running and not doing the mitzvah itself. I'm just trying to dissect and to zoom in on the word, on the terminology of Ben Azza, that it's a good thing to run to do a mitzvah. It's important, as we learned in great detail yesterday and the day before. But at the same time, we have to remember not to be only focused on the cleaving, but also to be down home and to do the mitzvahs and be connected to the bodies as Hashem wants. And one of those things that are to get married, to have children, to build a home, to have parnasa, education, shlom bayit. All of the above are all part of the shov, not just to fly off, but to come down, be settled, be grounded. And then Ben Azza says, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. One mitzvah causes another mitzvah. There was once a child, a young girl, that her friend encouraged her to start lighting Shabbat candles. And so she asked her mom, they were not an observant family, and Her mom said, no, we don't do that here. So she kept asking and begging and encouraging until the mother said, okay. And the girl asked that the Shabbat candle should be right in the middle of the home on the table. And so the next week, the mother said, you know what? It doesn't make really much sense to have the television on Shabbos. Because look, the Shabbos candle is right there. And then another mitzvah, and then another mitzvah, until they started keeping Shabbat. So that's the chain-like effect, the snowball effect of doing one mitzvah. Never underestimate doing even one little mitzvah, because doing one mitzvah can naturally encourage and uplift a person to be able to do many more mitzvot. Naturally, as human beings, we tend to be into materialism, which can pull us away from spirituality. And so therefore, each mitzvah that connects more to Hashem. And that's exactly what the Bartanura says. That's the main interpreter for the Mishnah. He says that is the minhago shel olam, that is the custom of the world. That a person that does one mitzvah, it becomes easier, becomes more comfortable to do another mitzvah. And if someone, God forbid, begins doing sins, it's hard to separate from them. And moreover, that the reward of one mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. Because he says, Min hashamayim, from above, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Almighty God, helps the person and presents opportunities that you should be able to gain nachat and benefit from the mitzvah itself. On the other hand, one sin can cause another sin. When a person opens the door to the Etsahara, to the evil inclination, even one little opening, that unfortunately can make it more difficult for the person to separate from doing sin. As it says in the Talmud Shabbat, in the tractate Shabbat, this is the trick of the Etsahara, the evil inclination. Today he says, do this. Only doesn't say the first day to serve idols. He knows the person will never agree. So he says, just do a little sin. And then the next day he says another sin, until chas v'shalom, you can tell a person to do really bad things. And the previous Rebbe derives from what the Talmud says, that it doesn't say that the first day the Etsahara tells you to do a sin. It just says to do asay kach, do so. It could even be he's telling someone to do a mitzvah, but he wants to get a person to listen to him. It's like Paro. Paro wanted to get people, the Jews, to do slave labor. So the first day he himself took part in it. Then he took part a little less, and then a little less, until there was only slave labor. He himself didn't obviously do the slave labor himself, but it starts off with something which is more often than not a good thing. But there's a joke. I don't know if it's a real story or it's but it definitely makes sense. There was a rabbi that lived in a little town in Russia, and they used to have people that came by to seek money, to collect money. And in this town, the rabbi himself would go with every beggar or with every individual to all the homes. He showed them where to go. So someone asked him, Rabbi, what are you doing? When you want to ask for money, then people will say, oh, I already gave to your friend and I gave to this guy and to that guy, because you've been taking them around. So why do you do this? Why do you take people around? He says, I'm not concerned about that. When it comes to getting people to give tzedakah, what's the trick? The trick is the chachma. To get a giving tzedakah, to put their hand in their pocket. Once they're used to it, once you've educated them about the importance of giving tzedakah, so they'll be happy to give tzedakah at any opportunity. So there's an interesting analogy in Chassidus that says a Etsahara with a shtreimel. Shtreimel is those fur hats that the Hasidic, ultra Hasidic people they wear right over here in Mea Sharim and many more places in the world. So the Etsahara with a shtreimel is, you would think, oh boy, the Etsahara is coming along. He looks so holy. So let's give him a seat. Let's welcome him into our domain. The answer is no. He might look holy. He might tell us at one point to do mitzvahs. But because we're listening to him, that's a no-no. We have enough leaders and mentors to teach us how to do mitzvahs. We don't need him to teach us how to do a mitzvah. Because it's very possible that in the beginning, he's encouraging us to do mitzvahs, but he really wants us to listen to his voice. And then ultimately, in the negative sense, he'll want us to listen to his voice and to encourage us to do bad things. The Maggid of Koznitz brought a nice mashal, a nice metaphor for this. There was a rich person that built a very big mansion. And his friend came and he wanted to buy this mansion for a very large amount of money. But the owner of the mansion totally opposed this purchase. So the friend asked, can I at least buy half of the mansion? And he said, no. He said, maybe one room? He said, no. At the end, he asked the owner of the mansion, his friend, he said, give me one little thing. I just want to bang one little nail into one of the walls in order to, I should be able to hang up my jacket. And so the owner of the mansion saw that he's just asking for a very little request. He said, it's okay. So the guy came to the mansion. He rings the bell. The guard asks, what do you want? He said, I got permission from the owner to knock a nail into the wall to hang up my jacket. So he went in, he banged the nail in. After a half hour, he rings the bell again. And he says, what do you want this time? He says, I came to take my jacket. Every half hour he came, he rang. And it made everyone crazy because he kept on bothering them. But he had a finger, or he had a nail in the house. The mansion said to his friends, take one room with a side entrance, and over there, hang up your jacket instead of making us all crazy every 5 minutes or every half hour that you want to come. So he got his room. He brought his family. They made a lot of noise. And it made the owner of the mansion's family crazy. So he called his friend and said, take a full floor, and then you can have your whole family there without having any pressure. Just don't bother us anymore. So he got the whole floor. And they made more noise. And he said, okay, just take the whole mansion. I'll go somewhere else. At least we'll be able to live in peace. So this is the lesson. That the Etsahara comes, he just wants one little nail, one little entrance. As long as he's there, then God forbid he can go in and take more and more. Of course, when it comes to a good measure, it means even more than by a bad measure. When it comes to a good measure, we want the Eitzer Tov, the good inclination, to be able to get in just a little bit, and then once he's there, then he'll be able to have more and more. That we talk about the mitzvah, that one mitzvah causes another mitzvah. There was a great chassid, his name was Rabbi Ben Zion Shem Tov. He came from the old country, but then he moved to, when the Chassidim left Russia, you're talking about approximately 80 years ago, more or less, and he moved to London. And he used to, this is already 70 years ago, maybe even 60 years ago, he used to go around to different Jewish homes and try to encourage the parents to sign up their children for his Jewish day school. So someone once asked him, why is it so important for you to encourage these children to go to Jewish day school? Their families are not observant, and they're anyways not going to be able to observe and keep what they learned in the school. So Rabbi Shem Tov said, I'm not only thinking about these children, I'm thinking about their children as well, and their children's children. So when you think about the one generation brings another generation, similar to the concept of one mitzvah bringing another mitzvah, then it's not only the mitzvah which is precious, that's very meaningful, but you also think about what's going to come out of that effort as well. That's a very deep way of looking at things. And I would like to finish off with a story which clarifies the tremendous power that a small mitzvah has, even a small mitzvah, on a person. It was a small town. There was a lot of joy. There was an orphan boy, Chatan, and an orphan woman, Kala. They were going to get married that evening. And the tzaddikim, Rabbi Mendel of Vitebsk and Rabbi Levi Sloboditcher, were going to be at that wedding. All of a sudden, the evil soldiers came to town, and they tried to bring young people for the Russian army, the Soviet army. Everyone succeeded to run away, except for the Chatan himself, which was grabbed by these Cossacks or by the soldiers. And this is on the day of the wedding. It was not the Cossacks, it was the soldiers of the Tsar. When Rabbi Mendel of Vitebsk heard what happened, he went to the general and he said, please free the Chatan. But the general said, only on one condition, that they bring him 5,000 rubles. So Rabbi Mendel went and brought Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and the Alter Rebbe, that they should go around to the people of the town to collect money to free the captive Chatan. So the Alter Rebbe agreed on the condition that he will decide who to go to. Then the Alter Rebbe said, please make me a list of all the people that are wealthy and comfortable and would be able to contribute to such a worthy cause. And then he says, there's a name over here at the bottom. Who's this guy over here at the bottom of the list? They said, he's a stingy guy. He'll never give. You asked us to put the list. We put together a list. The Alter Rebbe says, my condition is I want to go to him first. So Reb Mendel and Reb Levi Yitzchak did not want to go. But the Alter Rebbe said, remember, that's my condition. And so they agreed to go with him. They went into his house. He received them. He was a very wealthy man. And the Alter Rebbe told him the story. He opens up his treasure box. He takes out a rusty old ruble. And this is what he used to do every time someone came to him to ask him for money. People would usually throw it back in his face, and that would be the end of the meeting. The Alter Rebbe smiled at him and said, you're such a kind person. Thank you so much for your contribution. And the truth is that every penny, every amount, how much more so a larger amount, whatever a person gives is always appreciated. We should always show our appreciation to someone who is so kind to give from the kindness of their heart. But the Alter Rebbe said, thank you so much. And he starts walking away, and the guy says, 1 second. He couldn't believe that someone actually took it. He says, come here. 10 rubles. Wow, thank you so much, the Alter Rebbe said to him. And he kept on calling him back until he gave him the entire amount of 5,000 rubles to redeem the Chatan. They went right away, and they brought the Chatan, and the Chatunah, the wedding, was supposed to happen in the right time. And on the way, the tzaddikim went by this river, and they saw the general coming in his chariot, traveling quickly on the bridge that was going over the river. In middle of the bridge, the horses went off the way, and they drowned together with the chariot and the commander and the general. All of a sudden, the Chatan realized this beautiful treasure box. He opened it up, and that was the 5,000 rubles that the general had received from the tzaddikim. This was a gift from heaven for the young couple. And then the Alter Rebbe explained why he took the old rusty ruble from the stingy person. He says, because spiritually speaking, the person's heart was closed, and no one no one had agreed to take this rusty ruble from him. So nothing could open his heart. But the moment that I took it, that opened his heart, and that allowed him to want to give more and more until he was able to give the entire amount. And this is what Ben Azai said: run for even a small mitzvah, because one mitzvah brings forth another mitzvah, and the reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. Thank you so much for joining us. Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow, Lag BaOmer, will have a very interesting class right here, 9:15, on the subject of Lag BaOmer. And then Friday morning at 10 o'clock, we'll have Kabbalah Cafe, Bezrat Hashem live, and also here on Facebook Live and on Zoom. And next week, we'll continue learning Pirkei Avot, Perek Dalid, Chapter 4, Mishna Gimel. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day.